I'm the CEO president of the Chennault Aviation Military Museum. And I'm the granddaughter of General Claire Lee Chennault. That's why they let me run the place. One of the things that I admire most about my grandfather is that he never gave up. He actually he believed in himself, and he did what he needed to do when he needed to do it. And the military, when he joined the military, he believed in fighter tactics. He studied fighter tactics. He continued to study fighter tactics even though the bombers had come along. And the military encouraged him to start teaching bomber tactics, but he really believed in fighter tactics. And because of that, he was able to go over and he was able to make a difference in China. And many people believe he helped save China. And today, what he was able to do in China is an inspiration for what we need to be doing. He wrote a book in 1949 called Way of a Fighter. And the very last sentence of that book says, "It is my fondest hope that the sign of the flying tiger will remain aloft just as long as it is needed on both shores of the Pacific to show two great peoples working toward a common goal in war and peace." Today, China and the United States are the most important countries in our world today. Number one, number two superpower. We need to remember the time that we put aside our differences and we joined together to defeat a common enemy, and we succeeded. Just think what we could do in today's world if we put aside our differences in a time of peace and we accomplished what they accomplished and made a better world for our future generations. So this is something that is an inspiration that he did. And this is why we have the Chennault Aviation and Military Museum. We teach that story, but even more importantly, we tell the story of veterans and the people who served our country. Our museum is not about the wars, it is about people who served in the wars. We tell the stories. We have over 11,000 artifacts on display. But also, we have veteran services that are so important. We have PTSD clinics bi-monthly for combat veterans. We also have our own chapter of the Disabled American Veterans Association, who has been able to get hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of additional benefits for our local veterans. We're partnered with the Library of Congress in their Veterans Oral History programs to try to capture as many of the oral history of our soldiers and our veterans and their service for our country. And this is so important for our future, but also our education programs. If we don't educate these kids that are coming up today and these students, we're not going to remain free. We're not going to have anybody that's going to take up the fight for freedom. So what we can do to show our kids and to use our soldiers and their stories and our veterans as an inspiration to inspire these children that our country is worth fighting for, our freedoms are worth fighting for, is one of the biggest missions that I feel like we have in this museum.
And you have an art program. You just had an art contest.
We did. We're partnered with the Ouachita Parish School System and their Gifted and Talented Art program. Last year we did high school students, but we had 200 students that came here and were inspired by something they saw here and did these amazing pieces of art. And so tomorrow we get to have the ceremony for the winners of the art show. And so this is something we're proud of, because we also tell them, go home, find somebody in your family that served our country, find out their story, ask them what they did, ask them why they served their country. So we're really excited and we appreciate working with the gifted and talented art students.
Your grandfather, there's numerous magazines. What was his biggest accomplishment?
His biggest accomplishment is that he helped save China. He saw what people in need. He was only going to go to China for 3 months and do a survey of the Chinese Air Force. He got to China, he saw what the Japanese were doing, that they killed between 1931 and 1945. The Japanese killed between 20 and 55 million Chinese people. When he saw the atrocities that the Japanese were doing to the Chinese, the war between China and Japan broke out 5 weeks after he arrived. He wrote a letter to Chiang Kai-shek and offered his services to China, and they were accepted. And he stayed there. He started training Chinese aviators. He started recruiting Chinese to build runways in strategic areas. He started an early warning system that I feel like is the single most instrument that helped both of our countries to defeat the Japanese in China.
Results. His wing, very successful.
The Chinese American Composite Wing, it was actually a unit that was made up of both Chinese and Americans. The only military unit that I've ever heard of that was made up of soldiers from two different countries. And one of the reasons he did that is because Chinese believe in saving face. So some of his very best Chinese aviators would actually stay in the airplane and go down with the airplane instead of losing face and losing their airplane. So this way they could serve under the American rules and live to fight and fly again another day.
Now, the John Wayne, is there sort of,
it was called the movie The Flying Tigers, but it was actually made during the war, and it was kind of a propaganda film to actually boost the American morale at that time, to show these brave heroes that were over there fighting against incredible odds, sometimes 20-1 against the Japanese, and always being victorious. So John Wayne actually played one of the aces. He didn't play my grandfather, but he was actually, I think, portrayed Tex Hill, one of the leading aces of the Flying Tigers.
And the name, where does the name come from?
Feihu, Flying Tiger. I truly believe the Chinese looked up there and they saw these airplanes that were painted with the shark's teeth and the tiger shark's teeth. They revere the tiger very much in China, and they called it Feihu, Flying Tiger. And also, it was propaganda against the Japanese because Japan is a very small island surrounded by sharks, and the Japanese are very superstitious and afraid of sharks.
And today, Monroe University.
ULM is the ULM Warhawks, and the Warhawks, the mascot represents the P-40 Warhawk airplanes that were flown by the Flying Tigers. They were under the command of General Chennault.
The museum itself, you've got more than just World War II.
Yes, we have all wars from World War I through Iraqi freedom. And we actually, we have for the war on terrorism, for the war on terrorism, we have plaques with the names of everybody who's lost their lives from the state of Louisiana in the war on terrorism. So we really want to pay honor and forget. You know, we get kids in here all the time, and I take them through the museum and I ask them, I'll show them the Nazi flag. Who's seen that? Some of them have. And I'll say the Japanese flag. Less of them have seen that. The war they recognize the most is actually Vietnam. But when I get and say, I said, who's heard of Desert Storm, Iraq, and Afghanistan? I cannot tell you how few kids even know that we're actually still fighting in other countries today. They don't know this. They don't know that we have soldiers that are risking their lives so that we can live the lives that we have. So that's so important that we don't forget the men and women who are serving in our military and the sacrifices that they're making today. And we have Memorial Day coming up, and we have our Run for the Red, White, and Blue. It gives the community an opportunity to come out and actually run for somebody who has served in our military, but also, more importantly, to remember those that paid the ultimate price. We have a fallen soldier memorial out there that honors the men and women who have died while in service to the military.
In Monroe also was Selma Field?
Selma Field. The museum building itself is in one of the last remaining buildings of the largest navigation school in the whole United States in World War II. We graduated 15,000 navigators from here. We actually supplied almost half the navigators that were in Europe and in Asia. So we had an extremely important contribution during World War II. Unfortunately, almost 1,500 of those didn't make it back, and their names are on a plaque down at our airport today.
And you have a connection to the Civil War. I mean, your grandfather studied.
Yes, my grandfather's mother was Jessie Lee. Jessie Lee was the daughter of Dr. William Wallace Lee. Dr. Lee was a surgeon during the Civil War, and he was also second or third cousins, I haven't verified that, to Robert E. Lee. So yeah, we have a very strong connection to the Civil War.
Seems like military service runs in families. When
Yes.
you're in, there's a desire to continue the trend.
Yeah, and my father was in World War II. My father was a soldier, and my two brothers both served in Vietnam. So yes, we do have a very strong connection and very patriotic, and we believe in this country. After visiting other countries, you come home and you believe so much in the freedoms that we have here. As I tell every child that comes in here, I've been to China now, I think 11 times. I've never met a man, woman, or child that wouldn't trade places to have the freedoms that we have today. It really makes you appreciate our country. And I'll tell them, it's only because of our veterans and our soldiers that we have the freedoms that we have.
And China has a lot of reverence for your grandfather.
They do. I've been very honored, and I really absolutely appreciate the fact that China honors its heroes and its heritage. Sometimes they do a much better job than we do. And I've even been able to tell, I've met the Minister of Defense of China, I've met one of Madame Liu Yandong, Vice Premier of China. I've had really the opportunity to meet very high-ranking people in China, and they appreciate their history, and they also appreciate my grandfather and his service. They don't forget their heroes and their heritage. We can't forget that either. You can find us at ChennaultMuseum.org, and Chennault is CHENNAULT museum.org.